1A and 62 of the National Cohesion and Integrity Act. Charge 7, serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed gross economic crimes under Section 45(1), 46, 47(3), and 48(1) of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act and Section 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. Charge 8, serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes by continuously misleading members of the public through false, malicious, divisive, and insightful remarks that are contrary to the provisions of Section 132 of the Penal Code and Section 29 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. Charge 9, gross misconduct that is incompatible with the high calling and dignified status of the office of the Deputy President and a member of the Cabinet and the National Security Council. His Excellency the Deputy President has publicly attacked and undermined the work of the National Security, Intelligence Services and its officers. Charge 10, gross misconduct by openly and publicly insubordinating the President, who is the head of state and government. And finally, charge 11, gross misconduct by persistently bullying state officers and public officers. Mr. Speaker, this is a very difficult exercise that the House of the Senate is being called to undertake. It's the first time in the history, actually, of this country that this is happening. Though under the old constitution, pre-2010, Mr. Speaker, such an elaborate process wasn't available. To the best of my recollection, I don't remember this kind of an exercise where the Senate is being invited to agree to charges initiated by the sister house and confirm them after listening to both parties that appeared before us in the National Assembly versus His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua the last 2 days. Mr. Speaker, I do this with a heavy heart because His Excellency the Deputy President is somebody that is well known to me. I consider him, Mr. Speaker, more than a colleague in the leadership of this country, more even than just a normal acquaintance in social circles.
Majority Leader, you are called upon to give notice.
Notice? Oh, okay. Apologies. Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 5, special motion, proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya.
Senate Majority Leader.
Mic, please. My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I now hereby move the motion, which is the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. That aware that the National Assembly on the 8th of October 2024 resolved with the support of 282 members, being at least 2/3 of all the members of the National Assembly, that pursuant to the provisions of Article 145(2), as read with Article 151(b) and 2 of the Constitution and the Standing Order 65(2) of the National Assembly Standing Orders, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, be removed from office by impeachment on the grounds specified in the special motion. Whereas by letter, reference NA/DLP/TBO/MTS 2024 into bracket 025, dated 8th of October 2024, and received in the office of the Speaker of the Senate on the 9th of October 2024, the Speaker of the National Assembly informed the Speaker of the Senate of the approval of the special motion by the National Assembly and further forwarded to the Speaker of the Senate documents in evidence of the proceedings of the National Assembly. Further, whereas pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 151 and 2 of the Constitution and the Standing Orders 78 and 79 of the Senate had the National Assembly on grounds for the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And further, whereas pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 151B and 2 of the Constitution and Standing Order 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate also had His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, on the grounds of his proposed removal from office by impeachment of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Now, therefore, pursuant to Articles 145, as read with Article 151B and 2 of the Constitution and the Standing Orders 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate resolves to remove from office by impeachment His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, on the following grounds. 1. Gross violation of Articles 10(2)(a), B, and C, Article 27(4), 73(1)(a), and 2B, Article 75(1)(c), and 129(2) of the Constitution, and Article 147(1), as read together with Article 131(2)(c) and D of the Constitution. Charge 2, gross violations of Articles 147 and 152 of the Constitution by undermining the President and the Cabinet and effective discharge of the national government's executive mandate. Charge 3, gross violations of Articles 6(2), 10(2)(a), and 174, 186(1), and 189(1), and the fourth schedule to the Constitution by undermining devolution. 4, gross violations of Article 161 of the Constitution on the institutional and decisional independence of judges. 5, gross violations of Articles 3(1) and 145(5)(a) of the Constitution on the fidelity to the oath of office and allegiance. Charge 6, serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes under Sections 13(1)(a) and 62 of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. Charge 7, serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed gross economic crimes under Sections 45(1), 46, 47(a)(3), and 48(1) of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and Sections 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. Charge 8, serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes by continuously misleading members of the public through false, malicious, divisive, and insightful remarks that are contrary to the provisions of Section 132 of the Penal Code and Section 29 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. Charge 9, gross misconduct that is incompatible with the calling and the dignified status of the office of the Deputy President and a member of the Cabinet and the National Security Council. His Excellency the Deputy President, that has publicly attacked and undermined the work of the National Security Intelligence Services and its officers. Charge 10, gross misconduct by openly or publicly subordinating the President, who is the head of state and government. 11, gross misconduct by persistently bullying state and public officers. Mr. Speaker, I have observed that this is such a momentous task ahead, and I never imagined a few years ago, Mr. Speaker, that it will be possible after the journey that we have traveled with His Excellency the Deputy President in the political side that I belong to, that hardly 2 years down the line, I will have the difficult task of having to move the impeachment motion against him after listening to this case brought to this House by the National Assembly, in the case titled the National Assembly versus His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua. And the last 2 days, Mr. Speaker, together with other Kenyans, we have watched with lots of bewilderment, hard to believe pronouncements, and difficulty, Mr. Speaker, to believe that here is where we find ourselves as a nation. Despite the many challenges that we have gone through over the years, it was our hope, Mr. Speaker, that public officials would have picked up a lesson or two, especially those that are slightly older than yours truly, and many that are younger than me in this House, Mr. Speaker, and that in their conduct, they will reflect better the skills, demeanor, pronouncements of a leadership, Mr. Speaker, that this country continues to yearn for. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, listening to the case that has been brought to us by the National Assembly, I have reason to believe, beyond any doubt in my mind, Mr. Speaker, that they have justified the case that they have brought before us and have been able to ably demonstrate to us and to the country, Mr. Speaker, that there is no other cure by design of our Constitution to the challenges, either political or legal or otherwise, that are being faced, Mr. Speaker, by the workings and the working relationship between the President and his deputy, other than by way of impeachment. And the National Assembly has moved this House, Mr. Speaker, on 11 charges, blow by blow, with citations and examples in broad daylight, Mr. Speaker, showing and mapping, Mr. Speaker, that each charge, how it has been committed, Mr. Speaker, and how it violates either the Constitution or various laws of the Republic of Kenya. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are left with very minimal options. I have observed before this House, Mr. Speaker, that the Deputy President is personally known to me. I consider him a friend. I have had the opportunity to interact with him, learn a lot from him, Mr. Speaker, listen to his wise counsel sometimes. But this evening, Mr. Speaker, duty calls. And when duty calls, Mr. Speaker, there is very little that we can do. I am afraid, Mr. Speaker, that as legislators, as servants of the people, we have to listen to what the people are telling us. Mr. Speaker, we must appreciate that in 2010, when Kenyans went to the polls and brought about change via the new constitution, it was a call for us to have a better republic than had been observed previously since 1963. And there are various high ideals, high demands that have been placed in all of us that are in leadership. And I must add quickly, Mr. Speaker, that as you rise in stature from a member of a county assembly to a member of the National Assembly, senator, governor, deputy president, and eventually even as president, Mr. Speaker, that as you ascend in the hierarchy of leadership, the demands by the Constitution are even more. Number one, because you occupy greater public space, you represent more people. When you speak, Mr. Speaker, you say things that can affect either positively or otherwise the lives of millions of citizens. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, listening to the case that has been laid before us since yesterday by the lawyers of the National Assembly, reading through the bunch of documents that have been presented to us, attached with evidence, Mr. Speaker, I can confirm both to this House and to the country that unfortunately this country must make the difficult decision of having to say goodbye to His Excellency, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, because, Mr. Speaker, the reasons that have been listed have consequences by law of what you do when this happens. The National Assembly has demonstrated before us, Mr. Speaker, that on charge 1, that there are various articles of the Constitution, either through his utterances or his actions, Mr. Speaker, that have led other Kenyans to seriously believe and feel lesser Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, something that we thought we had slayed. We thought that we had worked so hard to build a cohesive society where it didn't matter after a political contest, Mr. Speaker, of who eventually wins, that you'd feel comfortable, you'd feel safe, you'd want to do business in any of our 47 counties, Mr. Speaker, and feel at home. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, listening to the utterances, reading through the response, Mr. Speaker, and the pleadings by his lawyers, and the pleadings and the admission, Mr. Speaker, by his own affidavit, Mr. Speaker, that either my good friend, the Deputy President, doesn't appreciate the higher calling that the office he occupies demands of him, or he has completely refused, Mr. Speaker, to accept the dictates of our Constitution. And when you get to that law, that place, Mr. Speaker, where there is conflict between man and our Constitution, then man must give way for our Constitution to thrive. That is a demand of a public office. Mr. Speaker, I know this is not an easy exercise. I have agonized and sat there wondering whether there could be other ways we could resolve this issue. And I know for a fact that there have been attempts, Mr. Speaker, not just this time, but previously. I know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that there have been occasions where either religious leaders, friends, people from business circles, Mr. Speaker, have attempted actually to mediate through some of these conflicts. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, instead of getting better, things have gotten worse. What is the essence of this session that we are having? Mr. Speaker, after listening through an impeachment process, the Senate sits as a jury to make a decision whether to find guilty or acquit. But like has been observed many times, and I have reminded this House on all the occasions when I have moved impeachment motions the last few years, Mr. Speaker, is an impeachment is political and legal conjoined together. It's about political accountability. It's about legal consequences of our actions as well, Mr. Speaker. There are political challenges, Mr. Speaker, that must be addressed. There are legal issues that have been raised as well, Mr. Speaker, which I want to believe when my colleague senators get the chance to address this House and convince each other. Perhaps people are watching and wondering, what is it that senators are doing at this hour? I believe that all the 67 of us that are here have had occasion to peruse through the evidence, listen, and this is a chance to share your thoughts about what you think and what is the proposed solution. I'm not sure, Mr. Speaker, whether my colleague senators will find the Deputy President guilty on all the 11 charges, or one, or two, legally speaker, or none. Mr. Speaker, I'm being quickly reminded by my colleague here that is possible. And that is fine, because it is based on what you had, what your mind is convinced about these particular charges that have been drawn, and what you think is best for this country, Mr. Speaker. I don't intend to be long, because I know, Mr. Speaker, we have agreed that we will do this not for a very long time. And I know there's so many of my colleagues that want to speak on this particular issue. But there are about 2 or 3 charges that I want to just focus my thoughts on, Mr. Speaker, and perhaps leave the rest to hear, to be convinced this way or the other by what my colleagues will pick. There is, Mr. Speaker, charge number 8, serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes by continuously misleading members of the public through false, malicious, divisive, and insightful remarks that are contrary to the provisions of Section 132 of the Penal Code and Section 29 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. We have institutions that are charged with the responsibility of making sure that we are a cohesive society, Mr. Speaker. By statute, actually, after the 2010 Constitution, we set up the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. And it was our sincere hope, Mr. Speaker, that that commission perhaps will help us, especially we that are leaders, learn better from our utterances and do things, say things that leave the rest of Kenyans feeling that they are proud patriots, that the things that we do make them feel at home in this republic. It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that despite this commission, for example, being funded by taxpayers, I have not seen them live up to the expectation, and perhaps part of the challenges that will emerge even after this impeachment process, Mr. Speaker, is to audit how some of these institutions continue to draw from the exchequer yet not live up to their mandate. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I saw them issue the other day, I think, a statement saying, oh, if you carry out this impeachment, process, it will divide the country. I want to tell that Reverend Kobe, I think his name is chairman, you better resign. I have never seen a public officer that is as disgraced as that gentleman. Why do I say so, Mr. Speaker? I remember in our days, last time, Mr. Speaker, this is the same institution that was so vigilant that would ban us even from coining phrases like hatupangwingwi and say that those phrases are divisive to the country. But I've seen for the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker, these narratives and clips that we are being shown, being whipped and hurting Kenyans on a daily basis, and have kept quiet about it. But finally, when the National Assembly has moved to say that we must put a stop to this, they finally show up on stage and say, oh, this will divide Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, surely, don't Kenyans deserve better from their public institutions, Mr. Speaker? I hope, Mr. Speaker, that at the end, by the end of this particular exercise, all the commissioners of that particular institution, Mr. Speaker, will find it fit to resign so that we can have Kenyans who understand how we can build a more cohesive society than those that are gatekeepers of those that push divisive narratives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been invited as well and have been challenged that on charge 10, that there is gross misconduct by openly or publicly insubordinating the president, who is the head of state and government. And I listened to one of the lawyers urge us and say, where is the complaint from the president? Surely, does the president need to complain to you, Senator Onyonka, to notice that there is a dysfunction in that particular office? That if there is a lack of symphony in action, in word, in deed, Madam Speaker, between the president and the deputy, and there is a continuous spat, such as what has been witnessed the other day, then constitutional consequences might follow, so that you clean up and have an institution that works for the greater interest of all the people of the Republic, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I know not everybody agrees with those of us that hold the view that the Senate has been sufficiently convinced by these charges, either one of them, all of them, or none that I say. But what I find difficult, Mr. Speaker, is to accept the proposal by those that want to reduce this House and claim that Parliament is a gathering of just a few people. And I have watched many people say that, pundits on the television, including none other than the Deputy President himself, who on many occasions, including last weekend in Embu, has said that his only faith is in the courts of the Republic of Kenya and nothing about this particular House. Mr. Speaker, perhaps it will be important for somebody to remind him, what is the history of Parliament? Parliament is a gathering of all Kenyans. I have said many times, Mr. Speaker, that because it is not possible for all the 50 million Kenyans to meet at one place and agree on issues, Mr. Speaker, they agree to do so through their representatives, Article 2 of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, a gathering of a House of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, cannot simply be wished away by being described that a few members either overturning or undermining the will of the people of Kenya. I believe Kenyans speak directly through the election or indirectly through their elected representatives, who are the people in the National Assembly, in the Senate, in our county assembly. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, when institutions of accountability are dispensing their constitutional mandate, such as what we are doing today, Mr. Speaker, if you respect our Constitution, then respect the outcome and the processes that have been initiated and concluded in Houses of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, just as you do with courts of law. And I appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that on many accounts, I know this process has attracted close to 30 petitions in our courts of law. And I agree with the learned judges that have, Mr. Speaker, made a determination that you allow Parliament to conclude on its processes such that anybody who's not satisfied with the outcome, Mr. Speaker, can exercise their right to appeal. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time and knowing that many of my colleagues want to speak to this particular issue, I want to conclude it at that and request that the Senate Minority Leader, retired Justice Stewart Mazaya, the Senator for Kilifi, does go ahead and second this motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kwanza nataka kuunga mkono hii hoja ambayo inahusikana na ile kesi ambayo iko hapa ya kuweza kumngatua kwenye mamlaka naibu wa rais. Bwana Spika, katika kanuni zetu za kudumu kipengele cha 145 kinasimulia ama kinaongea juu ya vile rais ama naibu wa rais anaweza kuondolewa katika mamlaka. Bwana Spika, kitu cha kwanza ni kwamba katika mashtaka haya yote yaliyoko mbele yetu, ukosefu wa nidhamu au heshima kwa Wakenya. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha kuona ya kwamba mtu kama naibu wa rais anaweza kusema Kenya ni kampuni, na kwamba Kenya pia vile vile iko na zile wanaita nafikiri zabuni amani shares, na kwamba ikiwa wewe hukuweza kufanya kitendo kama hicho walichokuwa wakitaka wao cha kupiga kura, basi wewe utangojea sana ili uweze kupata maendeleo. Bwana Spika, tukiangalia zaidi tunaona ya kwamba mtu akiwa naibu wa rais, yeye anakuwa kiungo muhimu sana cha kuweza kuunganisha taifa. Sasa wewe ukiwa kama naibu wa rais na umechaguliwa, kazi yako wewe, waliokupigia kura, ambao hawakukupigia kura, wewe maendeleo ni lazima yafike kwenye mashinani ya kote nchini. Na wewe ni ndugu, ni baba, ni babu, ni mzee wa nchi hii. Kila mahali unapokwenda unatakana kuheshimika katika nchi yetu. Lakini jambo la kusikitisha ni kwamba, na sio mara moja, sio mara mbili, pengine ambapo pengine ulimi uliteleza, lakini ilikuwa ni kila siku mahali popote anapokwenda katika hii miaka miwili ambayo tumekuwa nayo katika uongozi wa Kenya Kwanza. Yeye akiwa kama naibu wa rais amekuwa anahubiri, hata amekwenda maeneo ya ndugu yangu, na mimi namjua huyu ni Mkenya kabisa, ndugu yangu Cherargei, akatamka tena maneno kama hayo mwisho. Na sisi tunasema kwamba maneno ya kuweza kutenganisha Wakenya ama kuwapatia kwamba sisi tumepata, kwa hiyo kule wale wengine watabaki. Nchi ya Kenya ni nchi moja, na kama kulipa ushuru, kila mtu analipa ushuru. Pia sisi kama watu tunaotoka pande za pwani, pande za Kisumu, pande za Western, pande za kila mahali katika Kenya, watu wote wanalipa ushuru. Kwa hiyo nafikiri kwa maoni yangu ni jambo la kusikitisha kuona ya kwamba naibu wa rais anaweza kutamka vile aliweza kutamka ya kwamba Kenya ni kampuni na lazima uwe na zabuni ya kutosha ili uweze kupata maendeleo. Bwana Spika, vile vile mimi nitaongea kwa upande ule ninaotoka wa Kilifi, mahali panaitwa Vipingo, mahali ambapo yeye ana hoteli ya familia. Maana hoteli ilikuwa ya ndugu yake, lakini hatimaye yeye akaweza kuichukua ile hoteli. Sitaenda kwa upande ule wa mwingine wa kwamba pengine ilikuwa ya nani, lakini ilikuwa ya hiyo familia. Kitu cha kusikitisha ni kimoja tu. Katika maendeleo yale ambayo tunahitaji sana ndani ya Kilifi ni barabara. Na mojawapo ambao sisi tulikuwa tunalalamika zaidi upande ule ni kwamba barabara iligeuzwa na ikatoka barabara ya kutoka Mombasa mpaka Malindi, katikati ikageuzwa na ikaenda ndani mpaka kwa hoteli ile inaitwa Vipingo Resort Limited or something like that, ikaenda mpaka kule. Hiyo ni mali ambayo ingekuwa ilifaidisha zaidi watu wa Kilifi, hususan kwenye wakulima na wafanya biashara na wananchi kama kawaida kupata maendeleo ya kuona barabara hizo, lakini yeye akaigeuza na ikaenda kwake. Mimi mwenyewe nilipata nafasi ya kwenda huko, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, utaona kwamba barabara inahepa Mikanju, inahepa mpaka Miembe ikienda kwenye hiyo hoteli, ambapo sio jinsia ya vile barabara huwa zinatengenezwa. Bwana Spika, hapo tukaona kwamba ni kiukaji wa nidhamu. Bwana Spika, vile vile ningependa kusema kwamba si sote ni watu ambao tunaamini kwamba kunaye Mungu, na ukimkosea Mungu yeye mwenyewe huwa anajua kuna wakati fulani atakuja kukuadhibu. Bwana Spika, tumeona ya kwamba wale ambao walikuwa wamekosewa hivi sasa kuna malipo ambayo yanaendelea. Bwana Spika, tukiangalia haya malipo ni kwamba imetokea kwamba zile mali zote, watoto wote wale wa yule ndugu yake mkubwa aliyefariki. Jambo la kusikitisha kuona ya kwamba mimi ama ndugu yangu yoyote hapa ndani ya Senate hatuombi, lakini ukifa kama mali yako haitakwenda kwa watoto wako, inaenda kwa ndugu yako na bibi yake na watoto wake. Tunaona hiyo pia ni ukosefu wa kuona nidhamu ndani ya familia, ambao wewe kama kiongozi wa familia unatakana uilinde na uitunze. Naona ya kwamba wameweza kupata maendeleo. Bwana Spika, ya mwisho ambao nataka kusema kwa hivi sasa ni kwamba wajane wanapolia Mwenyezi Mungu hujibu, na nafikiria wakati wa kujibu sasa umefika. Kwa hiyo asiweze kulaumu mtu yote. Hapa ndani ya hili bunge tumeangalia, hakuna kwa upendeleo upande huu ama upande huu. Tunasema ya kwamba haki itendeke. Mwisho nataka kusema ya kwamba pia kuna ile ya kwamba ikiwa tuko katika timu kama wewe katika cabinet, vile vile Bwana Spika, tunaona ya kwamba katika yeye akiwa kama mmoja wapo wale watu ambao wanaketi katika kamati ile ya kuangalia katika nchi ya ujasusi, yale NIS, alitamka mambo ambayo yalikuwa hayafai ya kuweza kulaumu kiongozi wa ujasusi, ambapo haikuwa na maana yoyote. Kama kulikuwa kuna nia ya kusema kitendo kama hicho, angekuwa alimuita kamishna yule wa polisi IG, njoo hapa, na akamuita yule mkuu wa ujasusi, njoo hapa, na akaketisha pamoja. Je, wewe mkuu wa ujasusi uliweza kupeleka ripoti yako kwa mkuu wa polisi? Ama akaulizwa yule akajibu akasema amepata ama hakupata? Lakini kwenda kwa mkutano wa hadhara na kuanza kusema mtu fulani hafanyi kazi ndani ya ofisi yake, hilo lilikuwa ni kosa kubwa sana, na ambalo huwezi kuficha siri ya yale yanayotendeka katika ujasusi, katika ile kazi zao za ujasusi. Bwana Spika, kwa vile mimi ninaona njia ambayo ameelekea na kazi zake hakuweza kuelekea kisawasawa, na mimi kwa maoni yangu, na najua ndio maoni ya wengi, nimeonelea kwamba hapa sababu hizi ambazo zililetwa ya kwamba aliweza kukosea utendakazi wake aondolewe katika mamlaka. Naunga hoja hii. Asante Bwana Spika.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question. That aware that the National Assembly on the 8th of October 2024 resolved with the support of 282 members, being at least 2/3 of all members of the National Assembly, that pursuant to the provisions of Article 145(2), as read with Article 151(b) and 2 of the Constitution, and Standing Order 65(2) of the National Assembly Standing Orders, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, be removed from office by impeachment on the grounds specified in the special motion. Whereas by a letter reference NA/DLP/TBO/MTS/2024 into brackets 25, dated the 8th of October 2024, and received in the office of the Speaker of the Senate on the 9th of October 2024, and the Speaker of the National Assembly inform the Speaker of the Senate of the approval of the special motion by the National Assembly, and further forwarded to the Speaker of the Senate documents in evidence of the proceedings of the National Assembly. Further, whereas pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 151B and 2 of the Constitution, and Standing Orders 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate had the National Assembly on the grounds for the proposed removal from office by impeachment of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And further, whereas pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 151B and 2 of the Constitution, and Standing Orders 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate also had His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, on the grounds of his proposed removal from office by impeachment on the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Now, therefore, pursuant to Article 145, as read with Article 151B and 2 of the Constitution, and Standing Orders 78 and 79 of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate resolves to remove from office by impeachment His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, on the following grounds. 1. Gross violation of Articles 10, 2A, B, and C, 27.4, 731A, and 2B, 751C, and 129.2 of the Constitution, and Article 147.1 as read together with Article 131, 2C, and D of the Constitution. 2. Gross violation of Articles 147.1 and 152.1 of the Constitution by undermining the President and the Cabinet and the effective discharge of the national government's executive mandates. 3. Gross violation of Articles 6.2, 10.2A, 174, 186.1, 189.1, and the fourth schedule to the Constitution by undermining devolution. Gross violation of Article 60, 161 of the Constitution of the institutional and decisional independence of judges. 5. Gross violation of Articles 3.1 and 148.5A of the Constitution on the fidelity to the oath of office and allegiance. Number 6. Serious reasons to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes under Sections 13.1A and 62 of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. Number 7. Serious reason to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed gross economic crimes under Section 45.1, 46, 47A, 3, and 48.1 of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and Sections 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. Number 8, serious reason to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes by continuously misleading members of the public through false, malicious, divisive, and insightful remarks that are contrary to the provisions of Section 132 of the Penal Code and Section 29 of the Leadership and Integrity Act. Number 9, gross misconduct that is incompatible with the high calling and dignified status of the office of the Deputy President and a member of the Cabinet and the National Security Council. His Excellency the Deputy President has publicly attacked and undermined the work of the National Security Intelligence Service and its officers. Number 10, gross misconduct by openly or publicly insubordinating the President, who is the head of state and government. And number 11, gross misconduct by persistently bullying state and public officers. Now, honorable senators, the floor is open to debate. The Honorable Senator Fernandi, Senator Samson Cheranke. As we have already agreed, you have a maximum of 5 minutes. You need not take the maximum 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say from the onset, this is very momentous. This is the true test of Constitution 2010, because in history we are used to impeaching governors, not the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker, sir. On this process that has ongoing, Mr. Speaker, although as I begin, I want to wish my brother and friend, Rigathi Gachagua a quick recovery after that unfortunate incident. Mr. Speaker, the process largely has gone on well until the adherence of Article 50, Mr. Speaker, where we have not succeeded in giving fair hearing to the to Deputy President, Mr. Speaker. The reading of Article 145, and I want to bring to the attention, 4, does not specify the timeline on which the president, Deputy President removal can be listened. It is only by the special committee that it provides for 10 days. So, Mr. Speaker, that was very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, in the principle that justice should not only be done, but to be seen to be done, Mr. Speaker. Many Kenyans are asking questions, Mr. Speaker, what really happened? Number 3, Mr. Speaker, in observation, we didn't even allow state officers, a full-time governor, Mr. Speaker, to participate. This matter was decided in Constitutional Petition 204 of 2019, where state officers were barred by Justice Eric Ogola, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the issues, Mr. Speaker, because of limitation of time, on various grounds, like, for example, on the grounds for renovation of the office of the Deputy President, the funds were appropriated by the National Assembly. Yet the same National Assembly is accusing the Deputy President, who is not even an accountant. The accountant is a different person, Mr. Speaker. Even on the KEMSA issue, on the bully, in the grounds that they have been set, Mr. Speaker, they are saying that the Deputy President bullied KEMSA, Mr. Speaker, but there is no proof that that tender was awarded to the specified companies that were provided, Mr. Speaker. On even the aspect of devolution, the chairperson of intergovernmental IBEC is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate that we are coming to circumvent the same law and accuse the Deputy President of undermining devolution, Mr. Speaker. Even on Kambini Vipingo road, Mr. Speaker, no one adduced the evidence that this road is either public or private, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the aspect, even on unexplained wealth, Mr. Speaker, you saw the mover did not give us a wealth declaration form from EACC to show us unexplained wealth of Deputy President, 5.2 billion, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the grounds that have been adduced before the House stands on the quicksand, Mr. Speaker. And if you realize, on the 11 grounds, the mover was on a fishing expedition, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I don't know, because they say, Mr. Speaker, even when you read, I know impeachment proceedings either political, because it is impeachable, because they are neither high crimes, criminal, but based on the test of probabilities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, even when you look at many other aspects, Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge members, even as we go and vote, Mr. Speaker. If you see, as Francis Mboga, the play that was written in 1976, Mr. Speaker, they say, Mr. Speaker, if the madness of the nation disturbs a solitary mind, Mr. Speaker, it is not enough to say that man is mad, Mr. Speaker. Where we are at crossroads as a country, Mr. Speaker, whatever the outcome today, this country must move on, Mr. Speaker. We must proceed, Mr. Speaker. I know after today, the decision that we'll make today is not about the Deputy President. It's about the justice to Deputy President, justice to the people of Kenya, justice to each and every Kenyan who voted for the Deputy President, Mr. Speaker. And I want to finish by reading the book of Zechariah, chapter